podcast with Mandy Ross. If you're just tuning in, I'm Mandy, and if you're watching on YouTube, welcome back to the channel. If you happen to be listening on Apple or Spotify or another audio outlet, I'm so happy to be joining you, doing whatever it is that you're doing out there today. And this episode is one that's very near and dear to my heart. It's on a topic that I have experienced since I can quite literally remember in my life, and it's probably one of the most top requested self-development issues that is out there, which is procrastination. And as someone who quite literally used to have chronic procrastination, this is a topic I cannot wait to dive into with y'all, to go over, why it is that we procrastinate, what is the root cause, what can we do about it, and most importantly, what action steps can we take today? Because I don't want this podcast to just be a learning experience. I want it to be a space where you guys can take the information and apply it right away to see significant changes within yourself, but also in your life. So I'm very excited to dive in. Before we do, I want to give a loving shout out of thanks to today's video sponsor, my very own tea line here, which is Positivities. This tea line I created. Pull this, my favorite Energizer Bunny tea is my favorite blend. This one I created, as well as Sensational You and the Serenity. Each one was handcrafted and blended with an emulsion of different herbs for you to feel and look your best. I have poured my heart and soul into every single bag and batch of the various tea blends, and I would love for y'all to experience them at home. I start my day every single day with Energizer Bunny blend, and I can tell you I'm so grateful being in Mexico that I brought them with me, because my body quite honestly craves them. They're just so beneficial medicinally, naturally, to give me the nutrients that I want and my body craves and needs, but at the same time they help me to have this nice radiant glow, and I just feel better when I drink them. And that's exactly what my intention was when I came out with this line. So if y'all want to check those out, I'll put the link in the video description below. And without further ado, guys, let's jump into today's video topic. So I had a coaching client this week specifically ask for advice on this chronic procrastination. And one of the things that I want to really make sure of in this episode is that I never want to say that you or I are a procrastinator, because I truly believe in the power, and you all know how much I believe in the power of our words and what we speak as true for ourselves. So the thing about procrastination and the beauty of it is, even though all of us to some degree do struggle with procrastination, it's never about calling ourselves a procrastinator, because the moment you do, your subconscious actually embodies that as your identity. So, don't beat yourself up over it if you have called yourself a procrastinator, but from now on, I would suggest it's very important to make sure that you understand that procrastination is just a habit. It's not actually, a character trait, or it's not an identity. It's just something that we all struggle with. And the beauty of it is that because it's not actually a specific identity, and it happens to just be a habitual pattern that comes up for us, we can change it. So there's a lot of hope in that, and that's partly why I wanted to make this episode, is to also show you ways in which you can change what is just a habit. It's not you. You aren't a procrastinator. You are a soul or an individual who has an issue with procrastination, and there's a big difference there. So I wanted to actually pull the exact definition so we're all clear what exactly procrastination is and is not. So the actual definition is the voluntary delay of some important task that we intend to do despite knowing that we'll suffer as a result. And the first thing I want to say off the top of this episode that's so important to remember and to remind yourself of is that procrastination is not done because you're lazy or you're incapable or there's something wrong with you, or you're, I hate to say even that word, but you're stupid or something like that. This has nothing to do with you being a bad person or that there's something wrong with you. I feel like procrastination, again, call it hyperactivity, ADHD, whatever you resonate with out there. I'm going to use the term hyperactive in this episode, but typically a lot of times if we're individuals who also happen to be hyperactive or have a very busy mind, we can take on a lot, and we're already beating ourselves up for not getting everything done sometimes that we want to get done. So the worst thing to do in these cases where you're delaying your dreams or you're delaying the activities that could take you one step closer to what it is you want to accomplish is to then additionally beat yourself up and go into this negative loop of a procrastination spiral and just go downhill. So that's one of the reasons why it's very important in the moment of feeling that resistance come up. And I'll go into this a little bit more in depth in the episode, but it's so important to make sure you're reminding yourself that this again is an emotional root cause. This isn't because there's something wrong with you or you're lazy or you're stupid or some other derogatory thing about yourself. So kindness first. It's very important, number one, to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for not getting this right. It's something that and it's not because you're doing anything wrong, but for not knowing even what's really going on inside of you and feeling like you're doing something bad or wrong because you're delaying something that you should or could be doing that's good for you. We all suffer with procrastination. This is such a popular, it's funny to even use that word, but it's something that so many of us suffer from in silence, sometimes even chronically. I believe at least 20% of the population, if I'm not mistaken, suffers from chronic procrastination. That's a huge amount of people, and that's like chronically, which means the rest of us, or if you are someone who maybe isn't chronic with it, you still, to some degree, I'm sure there's areas of your life that you are potentially procrastinating in. So I want to go through these, I have about 10 different steps that we can take to really help us get through and grow through this unideal habit that we develop. So it's important to note that even though procrastination is a lot of times accompanied with things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, low self-esteem, poor concept of time, going through all this list, because I did a lot of research for this episode as well. As much as I've suffered with having procrastination, I also wanted to do my due diligence and just do a ton of research around ways that I could help y'all besides things that have just worked for me. I want to give you this full spectrum of tools you can turn to. But the key here is that it is an emotional and mental problem. It's not stemming because, again, you're lazy or you have ADHD or whatever the thing is, the label, right? It's an actual classified behavioral psychological habit that we have. Now, tip number 2 is to break tasks into smaller tasks. This helps because when you do that, it doesn't feel as overwhelming for you. Like if you're trying to accomplish a huge goal and you try to do it all at once, or you start thinking about accomplishing that huge thing, sometimes that can feel very overwhelming, especially for our nervous system and also just our mind to fathom doing that big thing. So if you break it into smaller especially if you could do things daily, that would be ideal. So even if it's the tiniest little increment that you can do, we always say getting started is the hardest part, because it quite honestly is. The other thing about that, which is very cool, actually, a very interesting study was done that says if you start a task and you do it for at least 5 minutes, which quite honestly isn't that long, you're 80% more likely to actually continue going with it. So imagine that. If you just start one task that would help you to further along on whatever dream you're working on, if you could do that thing, just get a start on it, and you do it for 5 minutes, you're 80% more likely to actually stick with it. And I'm sure you could probably get a good chunk done of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So that's really positive. So typically when we're in that procrastination zone, what ends up happening is we typically end up turning to another activity that gives us, let's just say, a cheap hit of dopamine that seems more stimulating for our mind than the actual task we need to do. So I am not an advocate who says, block, I was gonna say for tip number 3, eliminate distractions, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you to get rid of everything that's distracting to you. In fact, I invite you to have allotted time for your distractions. If, and this is key, if you end up doing the task that you need to do first. So you should, I would highly suggest putting in that calendar blocked time. Here's time when I can scroll on social media, play video games, do whatever the thing is, however you want to distract yourself or have downtime, block it in your calendar. You don't have to eliminate it permanently. I mean, it's pretty straightforward in this day and age that we're going to turn to certain activities that are a bit mind numbing or a little more or less brain deadening. That's fine. But make sure that you calendar block it as like a little reward system for yourself for actually accomplishing what you need to do first. As someone who has, again, dealt with this issue a lot in my life, I swear by having little rewards. Like, it could be the littlest thing. It could be, scheduling the downtime and that's a reward. It could be walking to a corner store and getting yourself a little treat. It could be watching, your favorite show on Netflix, if that's your thing. It could be attending a special event, like whatever in your mind, whatever lights up as like a reward, you can gift yourself that if you end up following through on your actual task that you need to do. So tip number 4 was have a little reward system for yourself. I think even as adults, it's such a joyous thing to still have in our lives. As kids, we always love getting those little gold stars on our assignments. So gift yourself an energetic gold star in some form. Tip number 5, which is so essential, is to, especially as an adult, you have to give yourself a deadline. One of the main reasons on record why we don't accomplish our goals is because we don't actually set a deadline for ourselves. Especially being an entrepreneur and being hyperactive, I can absolutely attest that when I don't actually have a deadline on my calendar for something, and it's not an external, someone having to give that to me, which a lot of the times is the case, I will end up procrastinating that thing, like so much more than when the times I've given myself like a deadline, like, okay, I have a month to do this thing, or, even better, I have to get it done by this week. This week I have to get this thing done. And knowing that I'm going to follow through on that for myself is how I've started to build that confidence muscle that I, have chatted with you guys about. And when you keep promises to yourself, you end up building a higher threshold for resistance, for confidence, and you feel better about yourself, and then you feel more capable of actually accomplishing the tasks that you need to get done. The other beautiful thing about this is, and I've said this many times to you guys before, you have heard me say this, action is the antidote to anxiety. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? How when we're in that procrastination zone, a lot of times we're feeling so much built up anxiety. Well, just a little reminder, my loves, when you take action, that will actually eradicate a lot of the anxiety you're feeling. The thing, and like, I know you might be sitting there going like, well, duh, Mandy, like that's the whole point. Believe me, I get it. But I swear, if you can just push through some of your discomfort, as hard as it is, like I know the anxiety feels so anguishing and like excruciating, but it's one of those things you kind of just have to bite the bullet and push through it. That's how you build resilience. That's how you build confidence, is showing up. When they say show up for yourself, it's not getting on stage necessarily or even getting on YouTube. It's the little micro moments that you are battling with yourself in your own mind, that you show up for yourself and you say, screw this. I am done with living this way. I'm done with not accomplishing my dreams. I am done not living the destiny that I know I was put on this planet to do. And you push through that discomfort to the other side of accomplishing those dreams that you deeply desire. I know I went on a little Mandy rant there, but it's because I care about y'all and I want you guys to succeed. That's why I make these podcasts and videos, because I also know, I know what it feels like to be dealing with that resistance inside. It feels terrible. The big thing that I want to add to this is that you have to be honest with yourself. You are not meant to live a mediocre existence. Life is not to be endured. It's meant to be enjoyed. That's what you came here to do. You actually are supposed to like your life and love yourself. That's actually what the honest truth is. The lies that you have been believing are not actual truths about yourself if they're not serving you. God didn't make a mistake when he created you. God made you because he had a very specific, and I don't care if you're religious or not, don't get caught up on the God thing. But God, in my opinion, created you for a very specific, unique mission on this planet that nobody else can do. And procrastination is literally the only thing between where you're at and fulfilling that mission. So you gotta get honest with yourself. You gotta stop wanting to live in this mediocrity. And I know if you're watching this video that you're someone who does not want to stay stuck. You want to move ahead. The only way that's gonna happen is if you have these honest inner conversations with yourself and you really start making moves in your own life. Nobody's coming to save you, my love. Nobody. You got to do this for yourself and be committed to this process. Tip number 6 is pretty short and sweet, but it can be really helpful to, especially if you're working through a big project, to just make sure you're always scheduling breaks during the day. I know I mentioned you can schedule some downtime breaks, but just in general, we as humans, no matter how hardworking you are, you need some, downtime for this mind of yours. So make sure you're always scheduling breaks. Now, tip number 7 is a very significant one. Because we know that procrastination is is an emotionally rooted cause, it's very important, and I've said this to you guys before, I have a whole video on it. It's very important to know how to emotionally regulate your nervous system. When you are met with anxiety, and we all know you will be because it is part of this whole procrastination loop, it's very important to know that you have tools like meditation, breath work, EFT tapping, yoga, so many things you can do to regulate your nervous system. So if you want help with that, I will put, I'll try to remember to put the video that I have on lots of different ways that you can get out of your anxiety / nervous system rut. But in any case, just figure out what works for you and make sure you have those tools on hand. So there are many reasons as to why we actually delay our dreams and our blessings and doing the positive habits that would bring us closer to accomplishing those things. But some of the general common ones that I'm sure you can resonate with if you do chronically procrastinate are things like fear of failure. On the opposite spectrum, fear of success. It could be, frustration. It could be self-doubt. It could be anxiety. It could be, just a variety of different mental obstacles that come up for you when you know you should be doing something, but you just can't get yourself to do it. I do also think, from all the research I've done and just my own experience in neuroscience and, you know, how much I've studied that field, a lot of this has to do with dopamine. And I can guarantee coming up there will be an episode just on dopamine alone, because I feel like dopamine is this neurotransmitter that dictates so much of our life, and it's such an important topic to go over. But there's so much to do with dopamine that I feel like it deserves its own episode. Let me know in the comments below. And by the way, if you're tuning in on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. If you're tuning in on an audio outlet, I love hearing your feedback as well as your 5-star reviews you guys have been leaving. I'm so grateful. I wouldn't be able to do this without you. So I just want to give a shout out of thank you to all of you who are tuning in. But when I learned that this was not because I just happened to be lazy or, you know, down or whatever, this actually made me feel very empowered, because I realized that it's not something I should be beating myself up over. In fact, that's just going to add to the resistance of me getting from where I'm at right now and doing the things that I need to do in order to get myself ahead. So number one is I forgave myself. I forgave myself for all the times that I disappointed myself, let myself down, and did not follow through on certain things that I said I was going to do. What happens for those of us who are chronic procrastinators, who have the habit of chronically procrastinating things, is we go through this spiral in our mind of knowing that we need to get something done, and we wait till the last minute until we have this invisible little, let's call it guardian angel, that kicks in and goes, oh my gosh, and then we go into like this panic mode and we get that done. And the reason why this is such a toxic loop in our minds, and what happens is we don't do the thing, and then we mentally beat ourselves up, we negative self-talk, then we get even feeling worse, we get down, we push the thing off further, which just continues to create. And even if like we do end up doing the thing, which sometimes does happen if we're given an actual external deadline, we a lot of times will follow through, but the agony and the anxiety and all the buildup that has to happen in order for us to get us to do that thing is literally crippling. Like, we sometimes even just go into freeze state. And I'm sure if you're someone who's chronically experienced this kind of procrastination loop, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I remember when I was younger, especially in school, thank goodness we had deadlines for projects, but I would put the project off until the very last minute. And I was an honor roll student. I had A+, you name it, very bright little, girl. But I would put things off until literally the night before, when I had so much time in advance to do these things. And although I would end up acing whatever the thing was, the presentation, the paper, the test, the amount of anxiety I would experience prior to handing that thing in was like insane. And so as adults, what can happen a lot of times, unfortunately, unless we have someone actually giving us a deadline like our teachers used to do, what will happen is we will end up and this is the worst thing, is we don't end up accomplishing our biggest life's goals because we don't have someone who's saying like, okay, Johnny, or okay, Sarah, you have this deadline by, Saturday, January 18th. And because we don't actually have that external deadline, things just go open-ended, and we just keep procrastinating the bleep out of these things and never accomplish them. And this could look like, maybe it's that thing, you wanting to get in better shape, or maybe it's you working on an intimate relationship. Maybe that looks like you building your dream home, and you don't actually have a deadline that's pressuring you. even though I know that's an anxiety kind of ridden thing, but you would still more than likely get it done if you had that external deadline. So as adults, because we don't have that, a lot of times we literally, and I hate to say it, but we take our dreams to our grave. Did you know there's a famous quote that says, I can't recall right now who said it, but it's just the emphasis on the quote itself I really like, which is, or the essence of the quote I really love, which is, do you want to know the most wealthy place on earth? It's the graveyard. Do you know why? Because in the graveyard, you will find the most amount of $1 million dreams. Unfortunately, those dreams were never acted upon because of procrastination. So they've gone to the grave. And as morbid as that might sound, I think it's a stark awakening of a reality that if we don't do something about procrastination and get on stopping it, then we're going to take our deepest dreams and desires with us throughout our entire life. We're never going to act on them, and we're going to take them to the grave. So this is why this is so important. I want to do this whole backstory for you just on how agonizing it's been. I have not only delayed, but I've literally, what feels like, have pushed away, quite honestly, or, dropped some of my biggest dreams in the past because I just couldn't bring myself to, whip out my little external deadline and act on my dreams. And at this point in my life, I'm not willing to do that. And I had to put my foot down. I had to develop a strong muscle of follow through and keeping promises to myself. So let's go through my top tips for y'all to nip this in the butt so y'all can start living your absolute dreams out loud. So tip number 1, I did say, was forgiving yourself. That's, I can go on and on. I could do a whole video just showering you guys with love. But I want to give another kind of first for you as a tactical tip, which is to get organized. Now, I'm a Virgo, as some of y'all know. I am probably one of the most organized when it comes to, calendaring things, color blocking my calendar, all that stuff. So I'm definitely not going to sit here and say that, the reason why you do procrastinate is because you're not organized. You could be the most organized person and still procrastinate the bleep. In fact, some of the most chronic procrastinators are people who have a very organized schedule, like doctors, PhDs, entrepreneurs, very successful people. So it's not that it's organization leads to an automatic, non-procrastinator, and it's not that you can still be very organized and still procrastinate the bleep out of everything in your life. So they're not necessarily equated. But I have found a couple of organization tactics to really help me blast through those times when I'm really procrastinating. I do find having a colored calendar really helps me to stay on time blocks, and it helps me to target focused tasks so that when I actually start doing that thing, I can look at my calendar and be like, okay, I've allotted this much time, and always a lot more time. Huge tip there. Always give yourself more time. Things always take longer. I swear to God, goodness gracious. But I know this from past experience. Things always take longer. The other technique that I absolutely adore is the Pomodoro technique. The Pomodoro technique is based around having, a section of focused work time, and then you take a 5-minute break, and you can get a little timer. If you don't want to get an official Pomodoro timer for your desk, you can even just get one of those little baker, the little baker timers that you use for baking goods in the oven, and you can just set it on your desk. But you allot a specific amount of time to do a focused task, and then you give yourself 5 minutes of breath or break time. So a lot of times right before we're meant to do that, task we finally have built up the courage to do and take action on, sometimes our resistance will feel like actually the worst. So that's why the nervous system regulation techniques are really helpful. A couple of things you can do in that moment if you're really feeling it is the technique that Mel Robbins, is somewhat famous for, which is the 5-second rule, which, she just recommends counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and go, and then take that action. Another one I really like to do sometimes if I'm feeling a little stressed is just take a couple of really nice deep breaths, like my phone just literally went off as confirmation. Thank you, God and angels. But that's one of the things that I love to do. That alone will already calm down your nervous system a little bit. So you can do those kind of like mini things right before. In general, those things will help you to curb your anxiety anyway. So it'll feel a little less intimidating to get a start on those things. Now, tip number 9 is to start building your confidence in other ways. Sometimes and even though this is an emotional rooted cause for procrastination, I do find and have found in my own experience that by accomplishing things that are nothing to do with that actual task I need to do for, say, a project or whatever the case may be in that whole arena, if I do things outside of that help me to build up my confidence a little bit more, it actually does end up reflecting and helping me to feel more competent and more courageous to tackle the actual things I need to do, say for work. So, these can be things that are just, quite honestly, they don't have to be anything like crazy big. They just are things that we can follow through on, that we have a lot less resistance on. In manifestation, I've talked about that before, where if you can manifest smaller things, sometimes the bigger things that we really want to manifest don't feel as intimidating, or they don't feel as big of a deal to us. So, I wrote down a little list here, like cleaning up, running errands, finally reading that book, calling a loved one. Just something that has less resistance to it, where, the thought of it doesn't kind of spiral you into being like, oh my God, I don't want to do that thing right now. Or, that's so crazy. I can't. Because when you start to do these little things and tick these off your to-do list, side note, recommend having lists, but that's just one of my things personally. But I always, and the reason why is I feel so accomplished, even if it's the silliest thing, like even having a grocery list when I go to the store. Every time I take something and put it in my basket, I feel so much better. I know this sounds so like, I feel like such a little, oh my gosh, I feel like a little, I don't know what, somewhat of a nerd here, but like I get such a high off of crossing things off my to-do list. It makes me feel so much more confident too. I'm like, yes, I did that thing. Like in my head, I'm cheering myself on, going like, wow, like, I kept that promise to myself, even if it's a small thing. Maybe it's doing laundry. Maybe it's like, I don't know, cleaning your house, like doing a big full sweep or whatever the thing is. It feels so good when you cross that thing off. And it honestly does, I believe, make you feel like a more confident, competent person. So then you take that identity as that new version, confident, competent you, and you can then apply it to the thing that you actually really need to do. And it makes you feel a little bit more capable of getting that thing done. Now, tips 9 and 10 kind of go hand in hand. Number 9 is to really assess where you feel like your biggest fear is in why you're not actually following through on the tasks you need to do. This does require you to have an inner conversation to really figure out what it is, and I'm going to go there, what your inner child might be fearing. Is it with a root cause because you don't think you're capable? Is it more so because you're doubting your abilities? Is it because you don't think the reward at the end of the day is something that you're possible or worthy of having? And I know these are like very kind of large questions to have to ask yourself, but to some degree, it's very important to actually, be honest with yourself and understand, like, why is it that someone like myself, who's so talented, smart, capable, why do I keep fearing? Because at the end of the day, procrastination is an emotional issue, but it's always stemming from a fear of ours. So it's very important to locate in your subconscious, where is that fear stemming from? Was it because of something that happened to you, most likely in your past? You know, is it just a lifetime of you kind of not following through? Is it something someone said to you? Is there a reason that's deeper that has to do with your capabilities? Or the thing is, and this is like, as your life cheerleader, I always say anything is possible for you, anything. So why is it that you don't think this thing is possible for you? It's very important to understand why we do the things we do. Why do we have the thoughts that we have? You know, why is it that we are able to do some things and not other things? I think these are very important questions to start that conversation within yourself, to really understand the mechanisms of what's going on within you. Because when you understand yourself better, you will be able to make significant changes. And if procrastination is one of those things that you deadly suffer from, then you gotta get to the root cause so that you can take action on your deepest dreams and desires. And those little baby steps are exactly what you need to do in order to get ahead in life. The question I always ask myself is, what is scaring my inner child, and how can I nurture that part of me? Tip number 10 goes so hand in hand with this, which is to be compassionate with yourself. Again, if you are someone who has or is suffering from chronic procrastination, chances are you are someone who is super hard on yourself, especially if as well you have ADHD or hyperactivity. It's so easy for us to beat ourselves up, and that is, I'm not going to have you be upset with yourself for that, but it's just something to really try to extend a compassionate, loving, that kind of energy towards yourself. The last thing you need right now is to be beating yourself up. You're already going through the trenches, not accomplishing what you want. So just being kinder to yourself can really go a long way with helping with this entire experience as well. So on one final note, my loves, I just want to remind you that procrastination is not you. You just have a procrastination problem. And I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, from someone who has felt, has heard, has seen it all in this area, I truly pray that some of these tips can help you to break through, you know, this just habit that doesn't serve us. Because at the end of the day, I always hold you guys in my thoughts and prayers as the people who I truly hope can accomplish what it is that you hold deeply in your heart. God didn't plant that seed for no reason. He planted it there because you're meant to do that thing. And if these tips can help you to get closer to doing that, then I would be so grateful, and it would make me so happy to know. So please leave all your tips or your experiences or anything that you wish to share from your heart in the comments below. I love hearing from y'all, and I also love this community, being able to share with one another. Confirmation, I love that. Being able to share with one another so that we can all help each other grow. Little by little, day by day, you can accomplish your dreams, and most big dreams are actually done little by little, baby steps every day. So you can absolutely, if I can get over chronic procrastination, which I'm not going to sit here and I still deal with procrastination, but I've taken it from being chronically into the procrastination zone to just procrastinating sometimes, which is healthy. It's all good. But it's not good when it delays our biggest dream. So that is why I created this video. I hope these tips help. If y'all want to connect with me for coaching or any of social media, it's at Mandy J. Ross, and I will have links for everything in the video description below. One final note, guys. I love you. I believe in you. I know you can get through this. I want to give a loving shout out of thanks to today's video sponsor again, PositiviTeas. I would feel so grateful if y'all would like, share, and subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and also leave your 5-star reviews on the audio outlets. And as always, my loves, I hope this episode helps y'all, and I am sending y'all so much love and light and wishing y'all a blessed and beautiful day out there.